Welcome along to Matchbook's NFL podcast after a pretty mundane, boring, I don't know what you kind of call it, weekend. Sarcasm, of course, the lowest form of wit. Drew Dinsick is back on board. Rob Pizzola as well. Sommer is here as well. I want to very quickly reflect on those games. I don't think we cannot. We'll obviously get through it with the championship games. But Drew Dinsick, I've been following the Deep Dive podcast for a long time, mate. I know you probably 3 years personally working with Matchbook. I don't think we've now and again we've got salty, Drew, but there was about the 7 or 8 minute mark of your podcast on Sunday night where you dropped the F-bomb, I think it was 17 times in a 2.5 minute stretch. So, mate, it was a roller coaster of a game. You let it all play out, the passion afterwards. It was a tough loss for Bills backers.
Yeah, I mean, the game that Josh Allen played was pretty much absolutely perfect. The Bills had a 3-point lead with 13 seconds left. The fact that they couldn't get a key stop or at least even just force a Hail Mary, that they let a very makeable field goal attempt go at the end of regulation was mind-melting. Not squib kicking by the special teams was questionable by the Bills, although I don't know that it would have mattered apparently because the Chiefs were going to get 40 yards however they felt like it at that point. And then, not to even to see the ball in overtime was tough way to end the season for the Bills. And, it's tough to look at any aspect of that game and say that they were the rightful winners. But, the emotional swings of having it seem like it was, seeing them complete such a miraculous comeback, and getting the 4th and 13 conversion in particular on that touchdown was so exhilarating. And then to lose without ever touching the ball again was tough.
Rob, so your best bet of the weekend last week, the 49ers +6, great number to get in terms of the game script and how it played out. But I will say, even at the start of that game, when you saw Rodgers going down the field and, there was a great opening drive, they got the touchdown, whatever else, but you probably would have been worried. But they never got that second score, the Packers, to make it a 2-score game because, even with the 49ers, it would have been a long way back for them.
49ers defense is now back-to-back performances against very, very good offenses in the Packers and Cowboys, where they've just basically shut down those offenses completely outside of a couple of good drives in those games. So it's very reminiscent of when they went to the Super Bowl a couple years ago. I don't want to say that they had an above average offense, but they were really carried by their defense as well in that time. And you're kind of see a lot of that again. I mean, it was a lucky win. Don't get me wrong. Based off my expected points running the box score post game, the Packers should have won that game by an average of about 4.5 points. But special teams matters. It's like a third factor of the game that we sometimes forget. The Packers have had horrible special teams all year. It came back to bite them in that specific game. But listen, my takeaway is that they played a game in very, very cold weather that I don't know that you can draw a lot of conclusions from regardless. It's just one of those anomaly type of games. They got away with it, got out with a win, and now they go into the Rams game this week, which we'll talk about. But if they could handpick where they're going to go for an NFC championship game, it's probably SoFi to play the Rams. So I think this is an interesting one.
Suma, post-recording last week, you released the Rams +3 on your own Slack channel. I suppose, look, for the majority of that game, you were pretty comfortable, getting a big lead, but they made you work for it in the end.
I think it was 27-3, and I made a joke on Twitter that at least they didn't make it 28-3. And that was almost the biggest jinx of the year. 27, I was already marking it as a loss, as maybe the worst beat of the season. And then kudos to Matthew Stafford against the cover zero blitz. Tough throw down the field. Great stuff. I think for 59 minutes, it should have been an easy cover. But then in the end, it was an epic sweat.
Hey, Suma, just watching the ticker here as we live broadcast. By the way, guys, if you're on YouTube, I see there's a few people joining the channel. Please leave a couple of comments or questions for the guys. We can't actually see any questions from Twitter on our integration here, but we will see them from YouTube. But Suma, a couple of weeks ago, you tipped up the 49ers. You made a decent case from a 27.0. The no, as you can see on screen, a 5.8. Did you get a few quid down there? I know you're not a major guy for backing the outrights, but you made a solid case at the time.
Yeah, I think there was certainly some value. I mean, how the game against Green Bay played out, it was very lucky to still have the ticket alive. But coming into this week, we will talk about it soon. I think they have another really solid matchup, and the tough one will be that you probably have a Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes. So that's the tough one in there.
Yeah, those outrights currently at 2.4. You can back the Chiefs, the Rams at 3.15, the 49ers 5.8, 9.8. You can back the Bengals. All right, let's get to it. NFC Championship games, the late game on Sunday night. The 49ers head into LA. Again, only a couple of weeks after doing that. Obviously, look, the Rams had their foot on the throat a couple of weeks ago. Could have got rid of Jimmy G and Co, but they did not. The 49ers, you can back at 2.66. The Rams at 1.56. The 49ers getting a 3.5-point start at 1.91 at matchbook.com. The other side of that, you can back the Rams minus 3.5 at even money 2.0. 46.5 is the total, and it's tilted towards the under. I know Drew backed the under here, 47.5. But Rob Pizzola, to you first, mate. You've been very bullish on the 49ers in previous weeks. I know you got a better number betting this during the Rams game, but 3.5, would you be still backing that if you hadn't got the previous number?
For sure. I mean, I'm betting 3.5 this week as well as they pop up. And I think there's just very little separating these two teams, in my opinion. Going into the year, the Rams were marginally ahead in the futures markets over the 49ers in terms of winning the NFC West. I think that the Rams are a slightly better team than the 49ers overall. But there's a lot of things that I think work in the 49ers' favor, specifically in this game. One is what I talked about. We saw these teams play very recently where it was essentially a 49ers home game. Matt Stafford said after the game that he really couldn't even, he couldn't audible at the line of scrimmage, couldn't hear what was going on. I mean, they're trying to do stuff in where do they play, Drew? Is it Inglewood?
Yes, Inglewood, California.
Inglewood. I noticed that they're selling tickets this week where you have to show your zip code in order to buy tickets. Like, the 49ers fans are going to find a way into this game. It doesn't matter. In terms of your standard, what your home field advantage is in the playoffs, it's probably smaller here than typically what you would see in other games. But what we've seen talked about, and it's going to be talked about ad nauseum this week, I think has to be mentioned. And it's the fact that the 49ers have beaten the Rams 6 straight times. The whole notion of Shanahan owning McVay. Now, this run of 6 wins over the Rams, they were underdogs in 5 of the 6 games. Most of them were around this range, 3 points, 2.5, 3.5. We have to note that 4 out of those 6 were against Jared Goff, and obviously Stafford is an upgrade. But if we look at the yards per play in all those games, we have San Fran plus 2.6, plus 1.3, and then we have a bunch of games where it's literally like a coin flip. Plus 0.1, minus 0.1. So we got essentially 2 games where San Fran largely outplayed the Rams, one of them which was this year, 4 games where it was a toss-up. And I look at the way that these teams match up against one another. One of the biggest advantages the Rams have against any team in the league is that they're very dominant at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. They have a great offensive line. They have a great defensive line. The 49ers are one of the few matchups for them where they can't really show that domination, because you look at what the 49ers offensive line is this year. They have a great tackle tandem. They have a great center. Outside of right guard, they're pretty much well above average across the board on their offensive line. On their defensive line, they obviously have one of the best pass rushers in the league in Bosa. The interior of that defensive line is also very good for them with Eric Armstead and DJ Jones, who are both top 20 interior defenders by Pro Football Focus grades. And then you add a very good linebacking core as well with Fred Warner. You have Al-Shair, you have Dre Greenlaw, who are top 25 linebackers at the position. So what the Rams do really well is kind of canceled out by the fact that the 49ers are not exploitable on the lines of scrimmage either. And you look at what the 49ers do really well offensively, it's running the ball and moving it down the middle of the field, right? Obviously, we watched last week. You want to pull your hair out sometimes with the Jimmy G throws to the sideline, where if a Packers defender looks up, it's a pick six. But for the most part, against the Rams, they attack the middle of the field. The Rams have a weak linebacking core. They have a weak safety core right now. They had to bring Eric Weddle off the streets to play safety for them. Where they really excel is in their coverage, and especially a cornerback with Jalen Ramsey. And that's not really the way that the 49ers want to attack you. So, I mean, it's very cliche, the whole styles make fights type of thing. You see this not only across football, but all major sports, where you just have one certain style of play that seems to work against a specific opponent. And I think that's what we have here. I think that's just the case. The Rams are a very good football team. I just think that what they want to do and how they exploit teams is not necessarily the way the 49ers are going to exploit it. And for anyone who wants to talk about Jimmy G being a question mark, I would agree. You know, you face the back-breaking turnover every week, right, where you're going to sweat on a few balls. But the reality is you're going to do the same with Matt Stafford. And even last week, first quarter, there was a play in the red zone where he threw the ball well behind Cooper Kupp, which could have been intercepted, went right through the defender's hands. And it wasn't. They score a touchdown. It's ball game. But you're going to get those plays out of Stafford as well. So it's not like one quarterback in this game is completely immune to the disaster. So I listen. I think this is going to be a very good game, very competitive. I just do not see enough separating these two teams to warrant a spread of 3.5. So at that number, I really like the 49ers.
Man, Jimmy G made some big throws down the stretch to get that game done, because I was going to overtime. In other words, Drew, there's so many factors at play. Obviously, that this McVay and Shanahan one is going to be worn to death before we get to Sunday night. There's some salient points that were roused with the numbers. With 3.5, I didn't think it would be this, and I thought, honestly, I know Sommer was kind of very hard on it, even post Sunday by releasing as well. I thought this number would come down, but there's a lot of resistance in the market, and we're obviously where we're at now, and it's probably staying there.
I would agree with that, and I think the most of the support here for the Rams in the market is based on just the absolute hellacious situational spot the Niners find themselves in. If this were a completely neutral situation and these teams were on equal rest, and this was, there wasn't an injury concern swirling around the quarterback of one of the teams, I think you would probably see this at 3 or under, probably 2.5, honestly. Because as Rob mentioned, on paper and by metrics, and there's not a lot of easily exploitable matchups for either team, and there's certainly not a lot of separation, and divisional opponents, a lot of familiarity. This is going to be a very close contest. I think the fact the support you're seeing for the Rams comes from the fact that this is now the 7th road game in the last 9 weeks that the 49ers are playing. Now, a lot of that isn't like especially arduous travel. One of the trips was to Seattle. 2 of them were to LA. But that game last week was non-trivial in terms of the kind of physical toll that it took on the Niners. They're going to largely be available bodies in this one, but to what degree those players are close to performing at 100% is a question in my mind. Certainly Kittle and Deebo Samuel limping off the field at the end of that game don't inspire a ton of confidence that they're going to be right. In a quick turnaround here, and those are hugely important players in terms of exploiting what the Niners are going to try to do offensively against this Rams defense. And then on the flip side, maybe even a bigger issue, the Jimmy G situation with his shoulder and thumb injury, and what exactly he's able to do in terms of playing an effective quarterback role is still a huge question for me as well. So I think I can pretty clearly see the matchup between this Rams offense and the Niners defense as a tough one. The Niners defense is obviously playing at an all-universe level right now, playing with a ton of confidence. They have wave after wave of pass rusher coming at you that is difficult for a team to deal with for 4 quarters. And so the idea that Stafford is going to be clean jersey throughout the duration of this, even if the Rams are playing with a lead, is not a guarantee at all. I think on the flip side, the Rams defense matches up fairly well against what the Niners are going to be able to do with their injury situation and quarterback situation. So this is probably a game that's decided by special teams and field position. I would even also look at McVay's kind of track record of playing with the lead and kind of losing a little bit of aggressiveness. Like, I don't think he's coming into this game and is like, I need to hang 40 points on this team. So this is probably going to be a lower scoring contest, in my opinion. I played into this under. It's ticked down now to 46. I think that's directionally correct in terms of market movement there. I still see a little value on under 46. I would have made this a 44.5 point total. I think realistically, we're probably talking about 23-20 kind of a final score here. And that's if Jimmy G is able to, limit the back-breaking turnovers at the end of this game.
Yeah, under 46.5 is available 1.91 a matchbook. So I think something that's been thrown about, and this is what happens with teams that can't generally run the ball, is that they will be vulnerable with a lead, and this Rams team could be that way. You tweeted out there this afternoon, on Wednesday afternoon, since Cam Akers is back, the Rams ran the ball 80 times on first and second down versus San Francisco, Arizona, Tampa Bay. Excluding fumbles, which he did a few times last weekend, he's got a 0.28 EPA/RUS, 2.9 yards per carry, 23.8% success rate. All three metrics would rank dead last on the season. And we've got a question in from Ada Hef as well, just asking, would you break down those first and second half? Would imagine those numbers much better first half. But it is a concern for the Rams, Zoom, in a big way, isn't it? In terms of, not being able to run the ball in the playoffs is pretty huge.
Yeah, and I just checked that stuff 5 minutes ago. Actually, they were better at running the football in the second half. So in the first half, they are minus 0.37 EPA per rush. Second half, minus 0.22 EPA per rush, and better success rate in the second half. And I think when we look at these three games, especially the Niners game in week 18 and last week, the Rams wanted to run the ball. They couldn't, and Matthew Stafford has had to bail them out on third down consistently, especially in the week 18 game against the Niners. We watched it yesterday. The only reason the Rams had such a big lead at some point, I think it was 17-3, was because Stafford was consistently making high leverage third down plays. They had a crazy 3rd and 11 conversion to Odell Beckham. They had a touchdown to Tyler Higbee on 3rd and 10. They had a touchdown to Tyler Higbee on 4th and goal or something like that. So it was pretty much the Rams couldn't move the ball on early downs against the Niners in both games this season. They are averaging minus 0.14 EPA per play on early downs against the Niners defense this season. And it was basically, the difference was Matthew Stafford making some key plays on third downs, and that completely evaporated in the second half when the Niners pass rush really got to him. I think it might be a problem. McVay has shown a strong tendency over the past 3 games of trying to establish the run. I don't know whether it's because he's got Cam Akers back and he thinks like having 2 or 3 solid running backs really helps him trying to establish the run. I don't know why that is, but he has increased his rush rate on early downs over the past 3 games, and it's just not been working. Like I said, just by metrics and just by efficiency metrics alone, it would be the worst rushing offense over the course of the season, worse than the Houston Texans over the past 3 games. So if they come into this game with the same game plan against this Niners defense, and Rob and Drew have talked a lot about that already, I think that's a terrible recipe, because I would not trust Matthew Stafford to keep making so many high leverage third down plays this season, this week. And furthermore, I want to connect to one point of Rob that he made earlier. He explained how the 49ers offense is basically a very complex run game, and then Kyle Shanahan tries to stretch the opposing defense horizontally and try to create space over the middle of the field where there's really the bread and butter of the Niners offense. Jimmy G has attempted the second most passes over the middle of the field in the 0-15 and 0-20 range. And on those passes among 27 qualified quarterbacks, Jimmy Garoppolo ranks 13 EPA per play and first in yards per play. Guess what? The Rams defense on passes over the middle of the field, 0-15 air yards, 29th in DVOA, 28th in EPA per play, and 29th in yards per play. That defense of the Rams, as Rob has explained, great pass rush, great on the outside, covering all those number 1 wide receivers. But the group of Troy Reader, Tyler Rapp, now 37-year-old Eric Weddle, they are very vulnerable over the middle of the field. They also couldn't stop the run game of the Niners in the second half in week 18 when Kyle Shanahan suddenly tried to call all these toss plays, and they just ran straight up the gut, and the linebackers couldn't really do anything on the second level. And I think that's the big weakness for the Rams. I think that's the strength of the Niners, and Kyle Shanahan will try to attack that all game long. And then I think it really comes down to which quarterback is going to make more plays. Either it's Matthew Stafford when he has to go through his progressions, because like Rob also has explained beautifully, the Niners don't blitz a lot. The Bucks blitz a lot. That was a matchup advantage for the Rams last week. The Niners don't blitz a lot. They try to create chaos and havoc with so many twists and stunts up front, and then they just try to take away the first read. And then quarterbacks have to go through their progressions. Even Aaron Rodgers struggled with that last week on so many third downs. And I think it really depends on whether Matthew Stafford makes more key plays in that game, or Jimmy Garoppolo can feed the middle of the field. And yeah, I'm also on the 49ers at 3.5. I just cannot get to that number. In week 18, the Niners didn't have Trent Williams. We had all that uncertainty with Jimmy Garoppolo's thumb injury, which was completely new, and the line also closed 3.5. And now we have some more information. I think the Niners will be fine. And yeah, it's also too many points for me.
All right. Yeah, it's hard to go against the 49ers on your case there, guys. Drew, any follow-up on that, maybe? Can we get you on the band with plus 3.5? I know have you got Rams futures, or is it the Calcutta thing?
It's got the auction Rams.
Well, I'm a lifelong Rams fan. I've never doubted this team for a second. Very excited for them to finally win a Super Bowl. The fact that I'm just upset that that the Super Bowl win is going to be tainted with the fact that it'll be at home and people won't give them the full credit they deserve for this. No, I mean, realistically, I'm a nervous Rams backer on this one in the futures market only. I'm not running to the window to lay 3.5. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I could see that just the market as we get into we'll get to the Chiefs game in a second here, but for the sake of argument, let's just say the Chiefs just dominate. Favorite cover is easy. There could be a little bit of late market steam on the dog in the night contest. We've seen that before where people are, kind of make up their mind late. The fact that the Niners did it the way they did it last week and everybody watched it and kind of has sort of this team of destiny feeling may get a little bit more market momentum in their direction with with volume of money. And sometimes in the playoffs that tends to move the market for whatever reason. So, I could see this coming back down to 3. I think if you want the Rams, you wait. And I think if you like the Niners, you need to probably act before kickoff on Sunday.
Yeah, we're recording this on Wednesday, so let's take the 49ers plus 3.5 at 1.91. If you're looking for total play under 46.5, Drew made the case for that at 1.91 also. Probably going to do some sort of special enhanced bet on podcast specials at matchbook.com over the weekend. We'll figure out what we're doing in the next game, but you can check that out at matchbook.com. If you haven't got a Matchbook account, now is a pretty opportune time ahead of the Super Bowl, obviously, and in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be talking props. Love a few props. Get those up. NFL 20, signing up, bet 20, get 20 at matchbook.com. You'll be able to avail of that offer, and you can check out the terms and conditions at matchbook.com/promo/NFL 20. All right, AFC. It's all ahead of us. It's going to be a good one as well. The Bengals and Chiefs. This is the earlier game on Sunday. Current price at matchbook.com. The Bengals are 3.85. The Chiefs are 1.31. Chiefs laying 7 at 1.93. You can back the Bengals plus 7 at 1.96, and 54.5 is the total. Ever so slightly shaded towards the over. Drew, again, I looked at this number -7 on Sunday night, and I was there. I don't know if this is going to hold. I suppose we have to look back the last couple of weeks. The resistance in the market is that Burrow did have his way against the Kansas City defense. There's some major changes there. But realistically, can he keep up score for score with Mahomes? He's been great the last couple of weeks in that offense. But I mean, this is a different beast as well, going to Arrowhead. All the experience with the Chiefs as well.
Yeah, all the experience, and even the fact that these last 2 games, this last game in particular, really seem to have unlocked the potential of the Chiefs.
Yeah.
I don't know why it matters that they have to face adversity before they click and start playing their best. But this is now a lot of examples we have of them playing down to opponents and kind of playing with their food. And then all of a sudden they get a real threat and have to rise to the occasion. And then next thing you know, they're absolutely nuclear, unstoppable offensively. But I don't see anything different about this matchup with the Kansas City Chiefs offense against the Bengals defense. It's a better matchup than they had against the Bills in pretty much every regard. I think they should be able to score 30 pretty comfortably here. And realistically, I can see Cincinnati shooting themselves in the foot in some ways. Zach Taylor still makes some questionable decisions in terms of how he puts together his game plan. His scheme is not nearly as dynamic as what Daboll ran last week for the Bills, and Josh Allen is a better quarterback than Joe Burrow because he has a dual threat. And you can argue that the Cincinnati Bengals have more weapons in the passing game in this contest, and that the secondary for the Kansas City Chiefs is vulnerable. That is all true. But the likelihood that Zach Taylor is talking himself into, I need to get Joe Mixon 25 touches if we think we're going to win this game. I can see he's probably talking himself into that as we speak, and he's crafting a game plan where they're going to try to play keep away from Mahomes, and it's going to ultimately burn this team. So, I think if the Bengals come in and they literally are like, well, nothing to lose, we're going to let Burrow throw it 55 times. If he takes 9 more sacks, who cares? This is a learning experience for him. Let's just get him some AFC Championship game reps because we expect to be back here. Like, if that's their mindset, they're going to score. This game's going to go over, and they might cover. But I think there's a very real possibility that this team gets tight and that Zach Taylor's game plan is not good enough to hang. And I think, that the Chiefs, what we saw from Mahomes in terms of his level of play last week in particular, if he plays 80% of that, I think the Chiefs cover this 7. I'm surprised it hasn't gone up to 7.5. I don't really know why there's market support here for the Bengals, honestly. There's not a specific matchup that I can point to that really favors them with their defense on the field against the Chiefs offense. Kelsey's going to be, have all the space to work with in the world over the middle of the field here. Tyreek Hill has speed that the Bengals can't even, hope to keep up with. And you can take a lot of lessons, I think, from the first half of the game between these two teams, and it just showed you what a mismatch this offense was against that defense. Now, the fact that the Bengals came back in that game was largely because the Chiefs defense wouldn't stop committing pass interference, and the refs were very inclined to call pass interference in that game. And that ultimately, kind of made that a closer contest than it would have been otherwise. But I wouldn't stop. I haven't laid any Chiefs here. I played a little bit of over at 53.5. Realistically, my case for that is I could see the Chiefs getting to 40. And, this could be like a 41-17 kind of a game. Would not surprise me even, in the least. The Chiefs have scored 42 now 2 weeks in a row, correct?
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's there's not going to be a lot of punting here for these guys. The screen game is working and clicking on all cylinders. Patrick Mahomes scrambling and his ability to gain the hard first downs on the ground is unstoppable. And they're at full strength health-wise. I think this is an overplay and lay the points with the Chiefs. I may take some alt spreads with the Chiefs too, because again, the Bengals are, this is a different class.
And remember too, like that Bills defense is pretty decent one. You couldn't really put the Bengals defense in the same category as Buffalo.
No, I mean, we knew the Bills defense was overrated. We talked about that before the Patriots cap.
But they're better than the Bengals defense.
They're better than the Bengals. Yeah, I agree.
And best pressure rate in the league, right? Bills defense is the best pressure rate in the league. Bengals are like pretty average. Go ahead, Drew. You can finish your.
Yeah, no, and Bengals. I mean, the Bengals are limping on defense too. Hendrickson's not 100%. The idea that he's going to somehow be the difference maker here and sack. No. And honestly, like, getting pressure on Mahomes didn't really help. It didn't do squat. It literally just the pocket collapsed and cracked in half, and he was he scrambles for 25 yards at a clip. Like it was. He was extremely elusive. He has incredible sixth sense in the pocket to specifically avoid the key takedown. And that element in this time of year, particularly the fact that he is at full health, I think matters a ton.
Yeah, Rob, if we rewind a bit, like to kind of late October, early November, there was these question marks over the Chiefs. The opposition defense is playing the safeties deep, and we were like, Ken Mahomes, they're just turning the ball over, but they figured it out. And when they figure it out, and it's almost like, yeah, we got you. And they had him last week too. And I can just see it going this way as well on Sunday night.
I can. You never say never in the NFL. Obviously, we've seen some crazy stuff before, but I have very little faith in the ability of Cincinnati's defense to slow down this Chiefs offense. And this is not just because of last week's performance either with Mahomes. I mean, this has been like the theme for them. They were the number 1 ranked offense in terms of success rate this year. They were number 2 in EPA. It's not like, yes, it was a great game, but even their average games this year have been very, very good. And Drew hit the nail on the head for me. I look at where the Bengals defense is weakest. They're not very good at defending tight ends at all. The Titans really couldn't exploit this matchup last weekend because Jeff Swaim isn't like a big part of their passing offense. But the Bengals give up 5.5 receptions per game to tight ends. It's the 6th highest mark in the league. They also give up over 6 receptions per game to opposing running backs, and they're targeted the 5th most in the league. And now you see Jerick McKinnon emerging as a pass-catching running back for that team as well. If you look at how the Chiefs beat the Bills last week, it really wasn't anything downfield. They were basically running the Steelers offense at a very, very high success rate because Mahomes is so good. And that's what the Cincinnati Bengals really struggled to defend and have struggled to defend the whole season. So it basically comes down to, can Joe Burrow keep up? He already has once this season. I mean, at 450 yards, 4 touchdowns, and they played earlier. Drew hit the nail on the head, though. That like officiating in that game led to a lot of sustained drives for the Bengals. Bill Vinovich's crew is refereeing this game this week. He calls the least penalties in the entire league and the least defensive pass interference penalties in the entire league. Now, it's a little bit of mix and match crews for these games, so you can't just, take that. You got to have to take it with a grain of salt. But that, in my opinion, favors the Chiefs because that's where they've kind of been getting burned. And the Bengals are a very disciplined team and have been for the majority of the year. So now if the Chiefs can get away with some stuff, I think that only works into their advantage. The big thing for me and why I'm not running to lay it with the Chiefs just yet, that's not to say that I won't. The Tyrann Mathieu injury is very concerning for me. The Bills, they didn't really have to target Sorensen last week because they could move the ball however they wanted as well. But if you do get a game where Daniel Sorensen is on the field for 100% of snaps, and you look at the Chiefs defense this year in terms of those games, their EPA per play goes to well below average. Now, that was early in the season. They didn't, their defensive line wasn't what it is now. They didn't have Melvin Ingram there yet. So you got to really try to decipher what's going to actually happen here. But I mean, the Bengals, if you talk about their postseason, if you could pick which opponent you wanted to have in week 1 of any team, you take the Raiders. If you could pick week 2, you would have taken the Titans. So they've played the easiest schedule. Despite that, their success rate on offense this postseason is 39.8%. To put that into perspective for people who don't follow success rate, that's lower than the success rate the Steelers produced against the Chiefs in their wild card round game this year. So it's actually been a very bad offense. They got outgained by 0.4 yards per play by the Raiders. They got outgained by 1.4 yards per play last week against the Titans. It's been very much smoke and mirrors for Cincinnati, is the reality of things. Now, does this remind me of when I used to bet against Tom Brady early in his career and just they get outplayed and they keep winning somehow? I would be lying to you if I said it doesn't. It reeks of the exact same thing. Maybe there's just something we don't quantify with Joe Burrow where he's able to take all these sacks all the time and just make plays. And they've covered 6 straight games, but I don't see how this is anything but Chiefs -7 or nothing personally. Arrowhead, again, narrative-y, but the crowd noise at Arrowhead is absurd. It's very different going to play in Tennessee versus playing in this stadium. Burrow wins these big games, always has for his entire lifetime, but I don't see this as being a good matchup for the Bengals. So it's a Chiefs or nothing. I'm really going to wait later in the week to see if Tyrann Mathieu plays. If he does, that'd be very close to laying the 7.
So in terms of the market, obviously we get to this time of the year, the markets are very efficient. It takes a lot to move numbers. However, if putting your your cap on for this one, there's resistance there to the Chiefs it's 7, that it's not come to 7.5 and 8 now. What could the people who are backing these groups, backing the Bengals, see at +7 that would worry you if you're a Chiefs backer?
I just think that in general, it's a big number to lay in general. I think it was week 17 where we had the first matchup. I think the market closed at Chiefs -3.5 on the road, and I think there was also late Bengals money. So I think
Yeah,
throughout
it
the
was
week,
definitely bigger in the week. It was five. It was five.
yes,
John,
yes, exactly. So there was also some late Bengals money. Now, even though the Bengals won that game, however, how fluky it was, now we are looking at -7. So I think that there are certainly some people who would just bet the number here at Bengals +7. However, they get to it. Matchup wise, I completely agree with Drew and Rob. I'm also looking at the Tyrann Mathieu injury. I'm also looking maybe there's more Bengals money later in the week. We won't know, but it's also Chiefs or nothing for me. This is such a great matchup. In the first game, the Chiefs were up 28-14. They were completely dominating the Bengals. And then all of a sudden, the Chiefs had 3 drives in the second half. Only 3 drives because the Bengals had like drives with 8 minutes and moved the ball and some crazy flags. And I think the second half in the game was pretty fluky, so to speak. The Chiefs had no business moving the ball down the field against their defense. Like I said, 28 points at halftime. And it could have been more because Tyreek Hill had like this deep pass just prior before halftime where Mahomes hit him right in the chest. And I think Eli Apple made a great play on the ball. So it could have been a 31 points at halftime. I just don't see how the Bengals defense can create any stops in this one. And then it also comes down to whether Joe Burrow can make plays. I think Drew and Rob made some excellent arguments. Tough road environment. That offensive line for the Bengals will be stressed once again against Chris Jones, Frank Clark, and Melvin Ingram. And at some point, Joe Burrow really has to make plays, has to stand in the pocket, has to deliver. And I just don't see how it can work again with so many defensive pass interferences. And also Jamar Chase, for how good he is, he also made some really, really sick plays in that game against man coverage. It's also tough to repeat. So yeah, it's at the current market price, it's also Chiefs or nothing for me. I haven't bet anything yet, but it's really, I could not bet the Bengals at the current point.
Hey, Patrick's got a good question here. All signs, or good comment, all signs point to Chiefs team total over Silva. You got 31. Geez, if you got 30.5, you definitely take it over, wouldn't you?
Yeah, 31 or lower. I think it's Chiefs.
Yeah. I mean, what's the game state where you're even ever sweating that? I mean, the
Bengals don't score at all. These Bengals surely will get something.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, but even if the Chiefs score 28 points in a quarter, like that's not that's not unheard of. And I mean, I hate to be kind of a victim of pattern recognition, and I fully acknowledge that there's a potential bias in what I'm about to say. But when they went on to win the Super Bowl, and that was only 2 years ago, that was a 7.5 point spread for them at home against the Titans. And I remember sitting there like, how in the world can this only be 7.5? Like, even if they're losing by double digits, I'm not sweating this. I'm laying the points. This is not a problem. And now we're getting 7 against an even less experienced group. And yeah, I mean, the matchups are so positive here in every respect for the Chiefs. I think laying the 7 is the right play here.
Just before I come off, guys, the total, Rob, 54.5. I think you got a better number. What do you make of that one? Now, if someone's looking to play a total, is it kind of a stay away? Is it got too out of hand, or what would your general advice be there?
It's a little high now. So just for perspective, right? This is the same total as Buffalo KC last week, which Buffalo to me has a more efficient offense than Kansas City. Than Cincinnati. Now, obviously, you can argue Buffalo has a better defense as well, but I still think this is an over or nothing. Like, honestly, I think sometimes we just talk ourselves into, oh, the number has gotten too high now, and there could be value in the under at this number. But like Drew said, I'm trying to actually answer his question and think of a game state where the Chiefs are not scoring points, and it's just very difficult to do so. And to me, it's not like the Bengals are going to get, put up single digits either, right? Joe Burrow is a great quarterback. If it's garbage time, we might see the Chiefs play a little bit softer. They can move the ball through the passing game. I don't know. I still lean over at this number. Now, obviously, I think now that it's gotten through 54 to 54.5, you just wait at this point and hope it goes back to 54, which is, I mean, a semi-key number, I would say. We don't see as these high totals that often, but you're not really losing a ton of value if you just wait out. But I think an over is a decent look in this game as well.
Yeah, and look, I think in terms of main bet, I think Chiefs -7 at more or less even money at 1.99. You'll probably get even money. It's probably not the worst bet at all. Just before we go to the best bets, just had one question in here from Shane. Drew, you might be able to speak to this. I won't touch on the Josh Allen. We could talk about MVP stuff, moral MVPs, and that's great. He's been fantastic. But has this been the toughest betting season ever in the NFL? It has been very tricky, Drew, hasn't it, in general?
Well, I mean, I haven't performed well. So if he's asking me personally, yes. But
I don't think he is, to be fair. He's not stepping up again.
No,
I think he's probably asking all of us, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a little weird.
Yeah.
It feels like teams kind of looked at the 17-game schedule and they changed their approach, or at least kind of downplayed the urgency of any one game a bit compared to years past. There was definitely a lot more patience among the contenders early in the season in terms of really trying to get right, as you saw with the Niners and the Chiefs. Honestly, like both of these teams, you probably could have gotten a Niners Chiefs exact Super Bowl at 50-1, 80-1 in like October at one point, when it looked like the Niners weren't going to make the playoffs and the Chiefs were kind of looking like a wild card at best. So it's not obvious to me that that's going to continue next season. Is it going to be more like years past, or is it going to be like this year where there's less priority on it, less urgency on any given week, any given game? Yeah, I mean, it's been an adjustment for sure this year. And honestly, like, I mean, my numbers, I had, upweighted quarterback performance, upweighted offense, and for whatever reason this year, as I look back, like defense mattered more, running mattered more. So it may have just been a weird outlier type of season as opposed to, kind of this is the way of the future.
Yeah, hope so. All right. Very quick recap of what we have so far. Obviously, only 2 games covered. 49ers plus 3.5 at 1.91, under 46.5 in the same game, also 1.91, and the Chiefs -7 at 1.99. If you need further content or further information and a recap of those bets, check out insights.matchbook.com. Of those ones, guys, best bets, Drew, kick us off. I think you might be leaning with the Chiefs here.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with the Chiefs. I don't have much more to add. Chiefs -7, I think, again, kind of going specifically to game state. Like, at what point am I worried?
Yeah.
Chiefs down 10? No.
It's not. It's one of those ones that, like, you're like, do not overthink it. Do not overthink even the number. Just back it.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at this point. And, again, like, if for the Chiefs not to cover, you're going to need the Cincinnati Bengals defense to come out and perform like the 85 Bears. And they don't have the bodies. They don't have the matchup advantages. I'm not seeing it in any way, shape, or form. So I think laying 7 with the Chiefs is the go-to move here.
They don't even have Mike Ditka. I would take Ditka over Zach Taylor, but that's what it's worth.
Ditka's probably not giving you a plus EV game script at this point in his life.
He just had a really good defensive coordinator too. Rob Pizzola. What do you think of me? Is a 49ers plus 3.5?
Yeah, it has to be for me. That's the one that I've played this week. I still like it. And again, that's not I'm not trying to discredit the Rams in any way. I actually think either of these teams could give the Chiefs a serious game in the Super Bowl just because of their ability to get pressure from the defensive line. But there's not much. The 49ers and Rams are very, very close to equal teams. They're, like Drew said, I think that definitely the uncertainty around Jimmy G is built into this line a little bit, and that's potentially why you're getting this price. But to me, last week is just I consider it an outlier game, cold weather game. He made some big throws that were dropped, which we forget about early in that first half. George Kittle, boomer over the middle of the field. Jawan Jennings had another one as well. And we just kind of forget what Garoppolo did down the stretch for this team, which was some incredibly efficient games, including one against this Rams team as well. So, 49ers 3.5, best bet.
So I think you're in agreement on that one, bud.
Yes, Niners 3.5, best bet. Very easy.
Very easy one. All right, my thanks to Suma, Rob, and Drew as well. We'll be back for Super Bowl 56. Haven't set a date yet. These guys are very busy that week. It's a very quiet week for myself, but these guys will be very busy. Of course, I'm going to set a date in due course. Don't forget, if you're enjoying our content, penultimate show of the season, please leave us a preferential review if you're listening to this in your podcast app or if you're over on the YouTube channel. We appreciate the comments as ever, but we'd appreciate even more if you give us a thumbs up and click the subscribe button. All right, guys, great job as ever. Best of luck with your conference final bets, and we will chat to you for the Super Bowl in 2 weeks' time. Bye for now.